Hey everyone, let's look a little bit at the characteristics of the term realism, and we're going to look at some art images to kind of help you visualize some of these terms, and then we'll talk about the characteristics one by one. So let's begin with an idea of what realism is. A time period in American literature from 1860 to 1890 was sort of like the high water mark of realism. Realism isn't as much a period of literature as it was a approach to literature. So you see here, it's a couple of quotes. We'll see one on this page and on the next page. But what I'm mostly interested in is what I have highlighted here in red. Broadly defined as the faithful representation of reality, which also means verisimilitude. That's when you talk about something having verisimilitude, it means that there are a lot of facts and a lot of realistic details. And that's what you see a lot in realist art and literature, especially the representation of middle-class life. So this is an approach to art of the middle class, the everyday. That's not to say you never see rich people, you never see poor people, but in general, it's a representation of middle-class everyday life. So, realists, and again, this is in terms of an art form. This is not just the term realism as we mean it when we say somebody's being a realist instead of a dreamer. We mean this as a literary or an artistic term. They are particularly interested in the here and now. So there's no kind of romantic ideals. It's more about real things. Okay, so that sounds kind of vague. Let's see if we can't make it a little more concrete for you. So what I have here are some images of different realist painters. This is George Bellows, and obviously you see here a painting of a boxing match in 1924 between two fellows. And what you see here is nothing romanticized, right? This is a real fight, real people. You see the lights, the cigarette smoke, the people in the audience. If you went to a real boxing match, this is what you probably would have seen. There's no romanticizing it, no talking about how glorious it is. It's just real life. Here's another image, and you'll see that the painting styles can vary greatly, but what's being depicted is what we're calling realism. Different realists had different approaches. This one's a little more painterly, right? We see a lot of heavy brush strokes and a little more of an impressionistic kind of view. You don't see the people necessarily in great detail like you did here, different kind of style. But it's very obvious that we have a snowy street, right? It's called Snow in New York. This is a 1902 painting. We have the street light, we have the buildings, we have the tracks in the road from the horses going by. We have the stoops with the snow piled up on them. Again, a very faithful depiction of what a New York street may have looked like in a snowstorm in 1902. And the third one here, a third style, again, you can see a different painting style, George Lux's Hester Street. Again, I believe that is in New York, but I wouldn't swear to it. It could be Boston. We look like there's a market over here. Maybe these are chickens hanging up. It's kind of hard to tell what they are. Maybe this is some kind of a butcher shop. We see, looks like somebody's selling maybe flowers here, either real flowers or maybe silk flowers or something. You can see a middle-class family out here. And it looks like maybe more than one family. Fellow playing with a toy. I think it's one of those animals that walk up and down the stick here. You can see the buildings. This is real life. All right, so I hope that's starting to kind of make sense what realism is all about. So let's look at some characteristics, and these all come from the American novel and its tradition. So a lot of detail, even at the expense of a well-made plot. So the description of people is more important than sometimes the plot. So, for example, you're going to be reading the Ambrose Bierce story, the occurrence at the Owl Creek Bridge, and the plot's kind of weak. It's just there so that we can get a look at the psychological makeup of the character. So we're looking at choices made by characters. We're looking at character motivation, trying to make characters as real as possible. Why do they do what they do? We haven't got Freud yet. We haven't got psychology yet. That's a few years off. But we're moving in that direction. Do people in particular social classes act a specific way? What makes people tick? So it's not just the details of the landscape in which they live, but also personal details as well. Class, look at the last item here. Class is important. And again, we talked in the last couple of slides about the middle class. And this is a growing middle class, right? Same thing is happening in Europe with this burgeoning of the middle class, and what they value and what their beliefs are. So you'll see a very clear depiction of that. Even though the plots may not be all that strong sometimes, they're usually plausible. There's not a lot of sensational or dramatic elements like you see in romances where there are lots of coincidences, like in Charles Dickens' novels. Not those dramatic elements of naturalist novels like Maggie. The speech and language is natural and everyday. We don't have a lot of long, flowery speeches. Mostly just kind of a matter-of-fact tone of voice, although sometimes we get some poking fun at society, which is what satire is. We're getting fewer and fewer interruptions from the author and saying things to the reader like, well, dear reader, this is what happened next. We saw that a lot in the fiction of the Victorians, where the author would sort of step out of their role of objectively telling what's happening to the characters and talk directly to the reader. So we're seeing that less and less. We're just given the characters and we have to decide on our own what we feel about them based on what they're doing, what they're saying, and interior psychological realism, what they're thinking. So the author is able to look into the minds of the characters now and give us a lot more detail. So those are the characteristics you're going to see as we spend this week on a couple of realist works. The Ambrose Bierce I already mentioned, and the Mary Wilkie Freeman, The New England Nun. So I hope you find this helpful.